Wait a minute. You're on.
All right. There was an ad in a newspaper. This guy needed some salesmen. So there was 3 men that answered the ad, and they went down to his office one Monday morning, and he was interviewing them. And one of these guys was kind of hair-lipped like. He couldn't talk very plain, but anyway, the guy took him in there and he asked this one guy, he told him, he said, "Now I got 3 openings here for salesmen." He said, "You got to sell toothbrushes, you know." And he said, "What I'm going to do, I'm going to give you some toothbrushes, and I'm going to designate an area for you to go out and sell toothbrushes." So he told the 3 men, he said, "I'm going to give you an area and you can go out and sell toothbrushes." So he gave him some toothbrushes, and they called them Salesman 1, Salesman 2, and Salesman 3. So he gave him some toothbrushes, and he said, "Come back Monday morning, I want to see how you do." So they came back Monday morning. They've been going for a week selling toothbrushes. And he called him in his office. He said, "Salesman 1, he said, how many toothbrushes did you sell?" He said, "I sold 430. He said, "Well, that's pretty good for the first week." And he asked Salesman 2, said, "How many toothbrushes did you sell?" He said, "Well, I sold 200, but said it rained and I couldn't get out one day." And I said, "Well, that's okay." And he called Salesman 3 in there. And he was the one that was hair-lipped. And he called him in there and said, "How many toothbrushes you sell?" And he said, "Well, I didn't sell any." He said, "I didn't sell any. But," he says, "I know I can do it." The boss said, "No," he says, "I don't," he says, "You know, I really don't think you're the man for the job." He said, "Yes, please." He said, "Please give me one more chance." He says, "I can sell it." He said, "Well, I'll give you one more chance." So they went out the second week and stayed out there for another week. And the salesman called him in. Says, "Number 1, how many did you sell?" And he told him. Salesman 2, "How many did you sell?" And he told him. Salesman 3, "How many did you told him?" He said, "Well, I didn't sell any." But he said, "Now I know I can do it." He says, "I know I can do it." He said, "Give me one." Said, "Please give me one more chance." So he said, "No," he said, I better." He said, "I'm just," and he said, "No, please give me one more chance. I can do it." So he said, "Well, this is your last chance." So he sent him out again. 3rd week come, called him in. Salesman number 1 told him how many. He said, "I sold about 3,000 toothbrushes." Salesman 2 said, I got mine up, so I sold about 4,500 toothbrushes." Called Salesman 3. He said, "How many did you sell?" He said, "I sold 10,430. The guy said, "Now wait a minute." He says, "You haven't sold a toothpaste." He said, "Well, I had a plan." He said, "My plan." He said, "What kind of plan do you have?" He said, "Well," he says, "I went to the airport, and," he says, "I set up a table." And he said, "I put my toothbrushes on the table." And then he says, "I went to the barnyard, and I got some horse dung, and some cow dung, and some chicken dung, and some hog dung, and I mixed it all up, and I made a dip." And he said, "I had my table set up, and I had chips on this end, and the dip on this end. And when the people got off the plane," he says, I says, "You want to buy a tooth?" He says, "I had my table set up," and I said, "You want a tater chip?" And he took a tater chip. And I says, "You want some dip?" And he took some dip. And they said, "That tastes like shit." I said, "You want to buy a toothbrush?"
4 minutes.